Good day to all. Welcome to Straight Talk with Greg Middleton. My name is Alexandra. With this introduction, here is Greg.
Thank you, Alexandra, and welcome to Straight Talk. Today I have a very exciting guest, Edison, who is the current president of the Pasadena chapter of the NAACP. Now, normally I read this long bio of his impressive credentials, but I don't want to waste my time because he's too impressive. Instead, I'm just going to talk about him, and he's going to tell you all about him that we would have had in an interview. So, Alan, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Tell me this, a lot of us older people know all about the NAACP, but I'm not sure our younger generations have much knowledge of the NAACP. So can you introduce them to what is the NAACP, what's the purpose, what's the meaning, and the reasons?
Well, the NAACP is the oldest civil rights organization in this country. It was founded in 1909, and the Pasadena branch was the 16th branch to receive a charter, and we've been in existence since September of 1919.
Wow.
Growing up, I really wasn't involved in NAACP at all. I had an uncle. I was on the National Board of Directors. And after I graduated from college, he got me a job at Lockheed. And my debt to him was become a member of the NAACP.
Tell me then, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in this area?
Grew up here in Pasadena.
Okay.
I was born at St. Luke's Hospital. I'm Edison. So Edison was a thing here in Pasadena. My grandmother, she was the epitome of bourgeois. And growing up, I kind of ran away from that.
When you say bourgeois, define the bourgeois. I
Well,
had an image when you said that.
My father and his sister and brother were growing up.
Right.
It was segregation.
Okay, yeah.
So they couldn't have formal events at the Hilton. So my grandmother, opened their home for formal parties. And, so we, were evolving into a middle-class community. And that was the objective of my grandparents, my parents. And so they were laying out Pasadena for me to succeed. Again, I, kind of shied away from that perspective. But now here I am. And
who instilled your basic character in you? Was it your mother, your father, your uncle, school teacher, or something? Who made you believe in you yourself?
Well, my grandparents, they had the grand plan. My father's job was to institute the plan. So in my house, education was the paramount thing.
Oh, good, yeah.
I was in the first class of Pacific Coast Children's School. So that was in 1957.
Okay.
So it was still segregation here happening. But I got a good jump start on socializing with other people. Was able to see where I stood and where my point of view landed and what I could do with it.
That takes me to, I remember, I grew up in the Jim Crow South, and we knew they didn't want us around. How were things in Pasadena during your childhood? Did you went to segregated schools?
Yes, I did.
Really? In Pasadena? When
Yeah.
did the schools become integrated in Pasadena? Do you remember what year?
1970s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I had no idea.
I went to Cleveland Elementary. Then we moved to Altadena. And then so that was the first kind of integration. situation, and then Elliott Junior High School, and then John Muir High School.
I know both of those, yeah.
And I knew the individuals whose parents had a lawsuit against PUSD for segregated schools.
Oh. Well, did your childhood influences or experiences have anything to do with where you are now as head of our national chapter of Pasadena? I mean, how can you translate going to a segregated school to looking at our children today who go to any school almost they want to? You know, it doesn't seem to be the same fight in them. Do you experience that?
Well, you know, I was raised to be a leader.
Okay.
You know, again, I didn't really want that role.
Okay. Rejected it, huh?
You know, and so my parents divorced when I was 15. And, you know, everything that I had been raised with, you know, kind of went out the window. And so I became introverted. You know, and so, you know, people didn't really know a whole lot about me. You know, so it's interesting now when my peers say, "You're the president of the NAACP?"
Right, right.
You know.
Right. Well, let's get off into that a little bit. What are the current things that's going on with the NAACP? I had my membership paid for years, and then I think I slipped, so I might owe you a check. But what's the current agenda of the NAACP? What are we working on currently? What's your main thing that you're trying to do right now?
Well, the main thing is trying to get our community engaged.
Okay.
People sit back, complain, but they don't take it any further than that.
Agreed.
And so, as long as we still have democracy, you know, your voice means something. And we as African Americans need to be heard.
Right.
Our ideas need to be heard. We get engaged, then we can do more things. Housing is a big issue.
Right.
The NAACP, we're taking it to home ownership, though. So it's affordable home ownership housing.
Let me interrupt you just right there because I did real estate for 20 plus years in Pasadena. And the way things are growing, ain't too many blacks can afford to buy a house in Pasadena. And the ones who are leaving, they probably can't come back. You said affordable housing. So explain that to me, this whole blacks can't come back almost.
Well, you know, a lot of our challenge is psychological.
Okay.
So for a family, two people, even one person, an income of $120,000 a year, you can afford to stay in Pasadena.
Right.
The question is, can you get a down payment to buy a house? And so, you know, we're working on some ideas with banks on how we can provide some down payment assistance to families. So that's a real serious thing.
Let me use your math. You said if it takes about $120,000 combined income to afford a house in Pasadena. How many of the average black families make $125,000? What's the median income of our black families in Pasadena?
In 2010, the median income for African Americans in Pasadena was $63,000.
63?
Yeah.
And it takes about $120,000 to buy here.
You know, I mean, the idea is, from my perspective,
Okay.
is to have a wife.
Right.
Okay, and so if you start doing the math at 60-60,
Right.
it's doable. And so, you know, our strategies have to change. We have to be able to create an environment where we can get our consuming dollars to stay in our communities. And so that requires small businesses providing goods and services that we demand. We did a study as part of the State of Black Pasadena.
Okay.
That in the Asian community, the dollar circulates 28 times, white community 17 times, Latino community 17 times, black community 6 hours.
Wow.
So, you know, just picture this. You get off work, go home, take a shower, spend your money. So it doesn't stop anywhere
Mm-hmm.
in our community, and that's the real driver for our need to have small businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just reading, I think it's circulating quite a bit, the reparation report or something like that, how it seems like a lot of races have been given reparations because of what this country did to hold us down. The reason we are so down, because we were held down. You know what I mean? So it ain't like we are running a 100-mile race on equal basis. They had a long head start on us. So I'm just looking at, doing the math. So if it takes 120,000, not too many people I know in the black communities make 120,000. I mean, I'm old now. I'm retired. But I think when me and my wife both were working, we might have had something like about that, but that was like 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Today would probably be making more income. Now, are the income levels matching the current cost of living? Do you see that in our community?
Not in our community.
Okay.
And so that's another strategy that we're approaching,
Mm-hmm.
is getting young men and women
Mm-hmm.
in the construction trades.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a project down at the Salvation Army.
Okay.
We've got some people there, and young men are making $55.02 an hour.
Okay.
Now, those jobs run out.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to create a mechanism to where you finish one project, you go to the next,
Mm-hmm.
and go to the next. But we're trying to get people into the building trades.
Right.
And so that's union labor.
Okay.
Protections, good wages, can create an environment where you can stay in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
I was a contractor in the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw how it worked, and it can work.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we have to expand the types of things we provide.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to, like I said, how do you prepare our people specifically for the job markets? Because some people might want to go to art school and major in art, or go to civic and major in some foreign language, but there ain't no jobs here for those things. So how do we educate or equip our people and prepare them for the job markets that are here?
Well, this is a high intellect workforce.
Okay.
So you got JPL, you got Caltech, you have Arts Center College.
Mm-hmm.
They got
Entertainment industry.
people. And so, to get into those fields,
Mm-hmm.
you need skill.
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of getting into those is going to be a time requirement.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have to talk about those things now,
Right.
just to get people interested.
Exactly.
And so, one of the things that we do,
Mm-hmm.
there's an event in October. It's called Connect Week.
Okay.
And it's put on by a group called Innovate Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we take young STEM students
Mm-hmm.
on a walking tour of startup businesses in Old Town. So we've seen, iRobot.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen EA Sports. So all this stuff is happening here.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're preparing our children for. But they have to understand that there's a there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not coursework.
Right. Right.
And, I have a pretty simple hypothesis
Mm-hmm.
that African Americans are the most creative people on the planet.
I agree.
And so, but with any hypothesis, you got to prove that.
Right.
And so that's the challenge,
Mm-hmm.
is to prove it.
When I was growing up, I was growing up in the South and segregated everything. So much emphasis was on us to get an education so we could compete in this big world once we got out here. So during my generation, a lot of people started going to college. No blacks in my family had gone to college before, maybe in yours too, but we were the first generation to go to college to prepare ourselves for jobs. And in fact, back then, I think they only wanted us to be school teachers and nurses and stuff like that. We couldn't do these other glorified jobs like attorneys and doctors and stuff like that. But now, all these opportunities are here, and I don't see us having a plan to educate our youth or to inspire our youth to go for the big things. I mean, there are no limits. They can be astronauts, they can be anything they want to be today, but how do we inspire them to get educated?
Well, I think a lot of it happens in the family environment.
Okay.
That's where I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know what happens, in family environments.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is exposure. And so just in this area, there's just so much that you can see and say, I can do that, or I can do that. So you look at how this area is evolving. We've got hospitals everywhere. We're going to see more hospitals. We're going to see more biotechnology. We're going to see innovation. And then, of course, Caltech and JPL, they're going to be sending people to the moon. And so if they do that here, then we should be able to do that too.
Right.
But we don't talk about that type of engagement. See, we almost have to be like preachers.
Right. Now, you mentioned like a lot of this starts in the home, and now we know, due to all these statistics, I guess the single-family homes in the African-American communities got to be very, very high. A lot of single women trying to raise boys and girls or raising children. That's just endemic to our race, it seems like, because when you're on the bottom and things are tough, it's hard to get along and have a good working environment to nurture children. So we have to somehow almost unpeel the onion and go back down to the core to figure out how to pick us up as a people. Is that something that the NAACP strategizes in any way? Because it says the National Association for the Advancement of Our People.
And so I'm glad you say that.
Okay.
Because advancement is the action word in our name. And so if you want to see how we're doing, are we making any type of advancement?
Right.
During the height of COVID, we turned our office into a clinic and provided vaccinations.
I like that.
On this housing issue, working with a developer to get some of our people into these affordable home ownership opportunities. And so, we're advancing, but advancement is really incremental. Because the powers that be, life is good. They don't want to change anything.
Them. Right.
Okay. So, we've got to be more thoughtful and understand the environment that we're playing in. And, so that's, to me, is direct action.
Right.
I have the opportunity, being the president of the Naacp, Pasadena branch.
Right.
Been here 103 years. I can get into most doors in the city.
Right.
I try to share that experience with other people so they can see that what I'm talking about is possible. And I think, that's been our big limitation because all this stuff seems like pie in the sky.
Right. I had a thought that I didn't want to forget. I'd hate to interrupt you, but I was thinking this motto I think Obama had, "Yes, we can," or something like that.
Yeah.
Somehow we have to make our youth believe they can, because the whole world has told us we can't, and they denied us the possibility of even doing it legally, held us down, kept their foot on our neck. So half of the battle seems to be is inspiring, letting them know, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You don't have, just because your parents didn't have an education, you're not limited to that. We got to unlearn this garbage they taught us. And make them believe in something. To me, it stems from my faith and belief in something bigger than me. So I don't know what the answer is, but if a person don't think they can, they probably can't.
Well, you know, a lot of it is we have to be the best examples.
Okay.
You know, people look at me, they look at you.
Mm-hmm.
What do they see when they see you?
Mm-hmm.
What do they see when they see me?
Mm-hmm.
And is that something that resonates with them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, some it does,
Mm-hmm.
many it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in all scripture, you know, you see it's a few.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a few.
Only a few.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, us few have to be sitting together,
Mm-hmm.
talking with each other,
Mm-hmm.
and executing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, see, and that's where I think we fail.
Mm-hmm.
But we can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not a role in America that a black person hasn't done
Right.
and done it well.
Sometimes better.
And so that's a good example
Mm-hmm.
in all these areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I've been chopping at the bit to ask you about, you know, we now have all this racism and bigotry and misogyny going on in our current environment. When I thought things were progressing, then Trump come along and everything seems to go backwards. How is addressing this racism stuff in 2022? I mean, Martin Luther King had his dream 50-some years ago that our little black and white children did and that, and now we're going downhill. How are we addressing that kind of thing in this day?
Well, you know, one of the things in my practice is that we were created in races and tribes
Mm-hmm.
in order to get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the question becomes, are we getting to know people?
Right.
You know, what's your circle look like?
Mm-hmm.
You know, who you talking to?
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of cases, people are just talking to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so a fresh idea is not going to pop up there,
Mm-hmm.
and really any kind of motivation. And so I come across this word last couple of days called idlers.
Okay.
We have a lot of idlers,
Okay.
and we got to be more action-oriented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, you had mentioned that earlier, the whole thing is action. If you find, life don't just give you something for nothing. You mean, if you want something, you got to reach for it. You know what I mean? But to me, I think what I'm seeking for is as it's saying about the chicken and the egg, which comes first. You have to be motivated before something happens, before you even get up into action, correct?
Well, you don't have to be motivated sometimes. You just stumble on it.
Sometimes, a switch motivated.
Yeah.
You know, because if you wasn't doing nothing, get up and wash them dishes. You know, so proper motivation would make people act. You know what I mean? But in today's world, you know, we don't like to use violence to motivate people. But sometimes, and I know I'm skipping subject here, but sometimes violence might have been necessary because we wouldn't have the changes that we have had those things not happened then. And I'm not a violent person. I don't proclaim violence. I think the new way of dealing with racism is let us take the bull by the horn ourselves. Let's don't wait on somebody else to do something for us. You know what I mean? I think we, like you said, we're very smart people, very skillful people. We got all kind of talents, all kind of skills. Why are we waiting on a handout when we got enough within our own community to build us up as a community? Does that make sense to you?
Well, you know, the big thing is conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, one of my big things
Mm-hmm.
is that we need to get rid of our televisions.
I like that.
And, you know, the inputs that we get from television
Mm-hmm.
are really dictating our lives.
Right.
So we got to change, you know, who's giving us direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have 600 members.
Mm-hmm. In Pasadena chapter?
In Pasadena.
Oh, I didn't know that. Uh-huh.
And so I'm responsible to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, you know, does things to my behavior.
Right, right.
But I'm also responsible for the greater community.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's probably the bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our doors are open every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're one of 3 branches in Southern California, open every day.
In fact, we only have about 2.5 minutes left in this segment. What kind of programs, like if people are looking for resources, would the NAACP be a place where they can go to learn how to, what to, or are you a resource agency also that serves the community?
We're an advocacy organization.
Okay, advocacy, but would you consider resource at all?
We're
Can people come to
advocates.
you?
We're
Okay,
advocates.
well, explain that.
You got a TV show.
Okay,
I go out in the community and say, Greg Middleton has a great TV show.
right, okay.
Somebody say, no, he doesn't. Well, I've been on it, and he
Right.
does. So I'm your advocate,
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean.
okay?
Yeah.
We don't do programs. That's not what we do.
Okay. Has that ever been a part of the charter of the NAACP programs?
No.
Okay.
Now, we've done some things, like the vaccination clinic was,
Right, right.
We have a African-American business directory
Okay.
that you can go to.
Right.
It's called meetlolovv.com.
Okay.
Lolo Vivi means there's always love. But that's a resource for people.
We have less than a minute, about a minute here. Is there anything that you would want to tell the community that's going on or coming up, or fundraisers or anything that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, we're planning a fundraiser, Jazz in the Spirit, on November 20th, 2022, to be held at Ambassador Auditorium. We're negotiating with the likes of Kurt Whalum, Kenny Garrett, Paul Jackson Jr.,
Nice.
Ooj Groove. So we're planning that event for a fundraiser. Our annual event we haven't had in 3 years. So it's kind of one of the disservices for me,
Right,
because I only had to participate in one.
right, right.
We also need to be social.
Well, that we only got about 15 seconds left in this segment, and I really would like to get you back to talk a little bit more, because we hadn't even delved under this. Some of the major issues, like I said, homelessness and stuff like that. There's so many things going on in Pasadena that I don't know if that's in your purview or things you address, like homelessness in our community. Is that anything that you look into?
No, we
Okay.
that has been one of our national priorities.
Okay. Right. Well, we're out of time, and let me end this segment and invite you to come back, because I need to dig under this onion and peel it off and see what we're doing here. Thank you, Alan. Very nice
You're
having
quite
you.
welcome.
All right.
You know.
Thank you, buddy.